Let me start by saying that I love the Gunvolt franchise. What started off as a Mega Man Zero successor with its own style of play has managed to acquire a good number of titles under its belt. Inti-Creates really put their heart and soul into this franchise, and it shows with the interesting character designs, set pieces, and everything that made the Gunvolt series stand out on its own 2 feet. Today, I'll be going into a bit of a deep dive for the first game and how Inti made a shockingly great game. I am also going to be getting into heavy spoiler territory from here on, so if you want to avoid that, I would suggest you head for the hills, then return once you know what's going on. The story opens up with Gunvolt in the middle of a mission for an armed resistance group named Quill, where he must assassinate an adept named Lumen. Just to give you a brief explanation, an adept is basically someone who has septimal abilities, which is a fancier way of saying superpowers. Both adepts and regular people exist for the most part, kind of like how those with quirks and without quirks coexist in the world of My Hero Academia. After battling his way through some of Samaragi's goons, Gunvolt eventually catches up to where Lumen is being kept, only to discover that the diva he was supposed to assassinate is actually a septima projection that belongs to a younger girl by the name of Jewel. According to her, Jewel's powers have been used by Samaragi for their cruel behavior towards adepts. Anytime Lumen is singing, Samaragi is able to locate other adepts that resonate with her abilities, so she's basically acting as a sonar for these guys. Later on, Samaragi will then capture those adepts and perform heinous experiments on them. All Jewel wanted to do at this point was to be free and use her songs for positive reasons. This reminded Gunvolt of the time when Osmov, the leader of Quill, had rescued him from Samaragi's clutches when he was younger and raised him on his own. Wanting to perform the same deed and walk in Osmov's footsteps, Gunvolt decides not to pull the trigger and rescues Jewel instead. Unfortunately, this decision resulted with him being terminated as a Quill agent, and he now has to live on his own as a mercenary. On top of that, Samaragi has branded Gunvolt as a wanted criminal for murdering their idol. After a few months had passed, Gunvolt had started to accept jobs from Quill, most of them resulting in taking out several powerful adepts that all work for Samaragi, while he's trying to figure out what Samaragi's motives are. Interestingly, all of these agents are based off of the 7 deadly sins, and each of their powers along with their personalities matches the sin they're supposed to be representing. These agents also get their powers from these glaives you'll see them use before they transform. After Gunvolt makes light work of some of these agents, we get a shot of a hooded man with a bit of a Holy Crusader complex following Gunvolt around and collecting pieces of those glaives from the fallen Samaragi agents. He then makes a vow to banish all adepts from existence before he disappears. Later on, Monica hits up Gunvolt about a dangerous adept they are currently pursuing. Zeno was hot on his trail, but he sustained an injury while he was attempting to bring him down. With Gunvolt now in the case, we learn that later on this is the work of another Samaragi agent who goes by the name of Zonda, an adept that can really trip you up with his illusion abilities. By the time we catch up to this lust-filled adept, however, he is already done in by the same hooded man who now introduced himself as Copen. Not only he is our rival character, but he really has it out for adepts and will stop at nothing to make sure all of them are dead, and Gunvolt is no exception to this vow. Since Gunvolt knows that the talk no jutsu isn't going to work here, the two of them get to scrapping. What is interesting about Copen is that not only he is human with very good fighting capabilities, he uses all of those glaives he collected in order to create weapons out of them just so he can use their septimal abilities from the agents we've defeated already. This of course will make him very Mega Man-esque, but this is not the very thing that makes Copen so dangerous. Rather, it is his gun called the Greed Snatcher. Getting hit by the bullets will temporarily seal your septimal abilities, making you no different than a regular human. So if you get hit by this bad boy, there's a good chance you might end up biting the dust unless you are very good at dodging his attacks. Now I know a good number of people may not like Copen too much since he's an Avenger that won't listen to any reason and will stop at nothing to make sure the adepts are eradicated, but I'm not gonna hold ya. He quickly became a favorite character of mine once he was properly introduced. You can tell by his design that he sees himself as some kind of paladin who aims to remove all of the sins of the world, and given the game's theming, his appearance and overall attitude beautifully fits this game and its narrative. He also gets better as the series goes on, but let's not get too far ahead of ourselves yet. Anyway, after Gunvolt hands him an extra crispy L, Copen makes a strategic retreat and Gunvolt resumes his hunt for the remaining Samaragi Sumeragi agents. Now, while all of these agents design-wise look cool and they all have interesting abilities, there is one particular agent that I want to bring our attention to because out of this entire group of oddballs, she is the oddest one of them all. This agent goes by the name of Elise! Elise has a very interesting Septima ability. At first, I thought it was duplication because you're fighting two of her at the exact same time, both with their own personalities. One of them being very docile, while the other is far more dominant. But then I learned that this is the result of one of Sumeragi's experiments, which caused her personalities to split into two separate beings. So what the heck is her power then? Is it venom? Throwing blades? They seem to have some kind of snake ability, so maybe she's just another version of Snake Man? Well, Elise's health is low enough so that she'll start using her desperation move, so maybe we'll see her abilities then. And nothing. No desperation or anything? She just kicks a bucket and that's it? What you witnessed there is exactly what happened when I fought her the first time back when I had this on the 3DS. I instinctively attacked both of them at the same time, mainly because this was a strategy I used in another game Inti-Creates had made in the past, Mega Man ZX Advent. There is a boss in that game named Argoyle and Ugoyle who had a very similar playstyle to Elise. Two bosses attacking the player at the same time while also receiving more damage if you attack the both of them rather than just going after them separately.
You! Me! We're broken! No!
And since Gunvolt already rewards you for attacking multiple targets at once, I figured why not use the same strategy here? Well, at one point when I was replaying the stage to complete a mission, I accidentally killed one of them a bit too quickly than the other because I stacked one too many tags, a mechanic I'm going to explain later. And then this happens. You see, if you don't eliminate both versions of Elise at the same time, they'll keep reviving each other until you do. That is because Elise's Septima ability is known as Rebirth. I probably should have put those pieces together myself since her stage is littered with zombies running around that will try to attack you. Zombies that came as a result of her power. One little detail I will point out about this ability that I do appreciate is her skill cut-in. If, for example, you were to take out the docile one, it will show the dominant version performing the revival, and it will actively switch between the docile and the dominant versions should one or the other perish first. As always, I appreciate this attention to detail. Anyway, with that Necro Snake dead for good this time, Gunvolt resumes his hunt for the rest of the Sumeragi agents. Once they're all taken out, his apartment is invaded by Merrick, who comes over to kidnap Oh, wait a minute, how are you alive? Does Sumeragi pull some kind of sick experiment and learn how to clone adepts too? Nope, this is indeed the real deal. Merrick even stated in his dialogue that Nova, who was the head honcho behind this whole organization, had revived him and he needed to return the favor. Needless to say, Gunvolt pursues after him, sent a nasty shock to his system, again, and then he storms into Sumeragi's base with his homies from Quill acting as a distraction for the frontliners with Osmov handling the operation. You just love to see it. Even after Gunvolt left, the members of Quill still had his back the entire time. Upon storming the base, storm. Gunvolt takes down some more Sumeragi agents that Nova has brought back with the power of Monster Reborn. The first being Beelzefraud, Lord of the Flies, Laserman.exe, and Rapidash if it was a Mega Man character. And each of these goons will attack Gunvolt one right after another without any breaks in between. And after all that is said and done, he'll then meet up with So I want you to know that this is Elise we're looking at, but something is different about her. Very shortly, you will learn that this crazy, uncontrollable version of Elise is the one who has been reviving the Sumeragi agents this entire time, including the docile and dominant versions of herself. It turns out that Gunvolt did take out Elise when he first fought her, but at the very last second, the dominant version had released this crazy version of herself and it escaped all the way back to Sumeragi headquarters. What's even crazier is that this unhinged version of Elise came first before the dominant one was created later. In fact, the whole reason why the dominant Elise came into play is because Sumeragi could not control this crazed version at all and found her far too dangerous to let loose. Either way, it is round 2, but this fight will now include all 3 versions of Elise, which will make this battle a lot more hectic than the previous time we fought her. I'm not even gonna stunt, I definitely got my behind handed to me on a silver platter in this fight a few times. Anyway, the moment you take down 2 of those snakes, the crazed Elise will come back and resurrect them. And then she is going to chill in a spot where you can't even reach her at all. And even if by some miracle you were able to do it, she is completely invincible to your attacks. Defeat the docile and the dominant one once more, and she's just gonna come shimmy on down and revive them suckers again. However, the second time she does this, a familiar bullet comes in and manages to hit Elise and take her out for good. The one who fired that shot is none other than our holy adept crusader, Copen. See, I knew he would come around. Perhaps after seeing all the amount of good we've done, he's come to his senses and probably wants to work together. Who am I kidding? We all know this is round 2 with this guy, except now he has all of the adapt weapons, including the Greed Snatcher. And he comes with a new desperation move where he makes duplicates of himself before rushing forward. But you can take him out with your lightning attacks if you're quick enough, which, let's be honest, I know I definitely wasn't. Once Gunvolt finally reaches Nova, the 2 of them have that classic conversation where the villain reveals all their plans to the hero. You know how this normally goes. However, this room is giving me horrible flashbacks to Mega Man 02 when Zero confronted El Paizo, the main villain in that game. Let's just say in that cutscene, X's body was destroyed by El Paizo while he's in a stasis. Jewel is also here in the center of the room, currently in a stasis. This is probably not going to end well. Anyway, Nova somehow manages to gain control over Jewel's Septima, and then he uses her to buff himself, making his Septima abilities that much stronger. And the only way Gunvolt can hurt Nova at this point is that he has to get close enough to jam Lumen with his flash field, then attack Nova directly. Alright, so I'm gonna leave you with a pro tip because this fight is pretty hectic. You want to stay behind Nova as often as you can, as it will keep you out of harm's way while remaining close enough to jam Lumen's projection and letting you get your attacks in. Once you've taken down Nova, he pulls out a polymerization card and fuses with Jewel along with 3 other glaives to turn into this godlike being that bears a lot of similarities to Omega from Mega Man 03 while having similar boss patterns and setups used when fighting Copy X's second form from the first Mega Man 0. Look, they even provide you with that little small platform you're supposed to stay on during the entire fight. This is where the game's difficulty really ramps up, since the only way Gunvolt can hurt him is if he tags both of the 2 mechanical beings on either side first. Then you need to tag that core and start attacking him with your flash field at all times in order for you to get your licks in. So here's another pro tip. You gotta use that Aruchi gun attachment. I promise you it is gonna make this fight a lot more easier to manage. Once you defeat him and he finally kicks a bucket, Nova warns Gunvolt that an adept rebellion is on the horizon, and without his society, there will be nothing but chaos and destruction waiting for him around every corner. Now that Nova is taken out, Jewel is saved, and our homeboy is ready to call it a day. And he kinda deserves that too with everything that happened. Just as he's leaving though, Osmov meets him on the way out and reveals his true plan, which is to use both Gunvolt and Jewel to eradicate all the humans and create a world where only adepts exist. You know, this is sounding awfully familiar. It turns out Osmov has wanted to do this all along, as he's grown sick of the level of oppression the adepts had to constantly face from the humans, but he needed to take Sumeragi down first before he can put his plan into motion, which does make a lot of sense when you consider the fact that the reason behind Quill's existence is to rebel against the cruel lifestyle adepts had forever. Gunvolt, of course, wanted nothing to do with that, seeing as how this was only going to put Jewel right back at square one with her songs being weaponized rather than being used used for the greater good. Now, Osmov didn't take too kindly to that, and he basically hits Gunvolt with that energy saying, you know what, I brought you into this world, and I could definitely take you out. So he proceeds to shoot Gunvolt using Copen's Greed Snatcher, implying that he took it from him while Copen was still recovering. Then he shoots Gunvolt again with his Septima powers sealed and killed him right there on the spot. Then he looks over at Jewel with the same energy and said, you can join him too, and took her out in the same fashion. And that's it. Story's over. Both Gunvolt and Jewel are dead, and Osmov is free to do whatever he wants. But come on, you know that that's not how it's really going to go down. If you load up your save file, it'll be revealed to you that what you witnessed was actually a dream. A forewarning of what is to come should you not take the precautionary measures to prevent the horrible fate that is happening. In order to achieve this, you need to collect a single gemstone that is hidden in each of the stages minus the intro and the last 4 tower levels. Then you need to talk to Jewel each time you acquired one. Once you've given them all to her, she will create a necklace out of it, and then you need to equip that necklace and defeat Nova again. Doing so is going to cause that same cutscene with Osmov to play out, but instead of Gunvolt dying, his life now hangs by a thread thanks to the necklace Jewel made for him as it manages to catch the bullet. However, he is still knocking on death's door. So both Jewel and Lumen came up with a solution in order to save him. Good news is, her solution worked as Gunvolt is now awake and his wounds are fully healed up. Unfortunately... Unfortunately, Jewel still kicks the bucket. Well, sort of. Once she's been taken out by Osmov, Jewel had merged her mind and spirit with Lumen, fully becoming one with her Septima. She then uses her newfound life form to fuse with Gunvolt's Septima energy, giving his powers a massive boost and recovered any injuries he had sustained so far. From this point forward till the end of the game, Gunvolt's now going to have access to endless jumps and air dashes, plus he'll never run out of electric energy, which means we're free to go ham from here on out. Now realizing that Jewel will be with him forever and getting a permanent buff to all of his abilities, Gunvolt surges after Osmov and... oh, you know what? I had completely forgotten all about you. After one massively one-sided, unfair battle later, Gunvolt confronts Osmov, who reveals that he has the exact same powers as he does and he's better than him in every way. Then the real final battle begins. Once again, this fight is pretty wild. Not only you need to watch out for the Greed Snatcher bullets, as one hit from these suckers will likely cause your demise, but you also need to watch out for his Voltic chains, which can one-shot you no matter what. You'll be able to survive it, however, if you jump all the way to the top while your flash field is active and stay in the most spacious area until it ends. All of his attacks hit pretty hard too, so it may take you a few tries before you finally bring him down. But once you do, you're gonna be rewarded with one heck of a bittersweet ending. Before Osmov dies, he praises Gunvolt for the amount of power he has and said that he'd make a wonderful leader for the rest of the Adepts. But Gunvolt had no interest in any of that. He just wanted to avenge Jewel and call it a day. But then Osmov leaves Gunvolt with a warning similar to what Nova had said earlier. Due to the amount of power he has amassed, there will come a time where he's going to either fight alongside the Adepts or against them, and he will definitely be caught in the middle of that struggle. After leaving the future of the Adepts in Gunvolt's hands, he then dies right there on the spot. Once Gunvolt reaches the bottom of the tower where the entrance is, his homies from Quill are there to greet him, but it didn't take long for them to realize Osmov's current condition. Zeno tries to get answers from Gunvolt on what happened and why Jewel is nowhere to be seen, but after he gets pushed back by an invisible force field created by Lumen, he proceeds to watch as Gunvolt just walks away in silence, figuring out what his next plan of action will be after his whole world crumbled in a single night. Peace has returned for now, but with the warnings both Nova and Osmov left behind, we know that that peace is not gonna last very long. On top of all of this, Gunvolt couldn't even save the girl he cherished. It really makes you wonder if everything he went through was really worth it in the end. Well, we'll find out all of these answers in its upcoming sequel, which I will gladly cover in due time. Right from the jump, Gunvolt's story already sets itself apart from the Mega Man games, taking on a darker, more approach to its story this time around. While the X and the Mega Man Zero games had a more serious storytelling in their own right, Gunvolt was able to elevate that style of storytelling since the game isn't limited to an audience that is geared towards kids like the Mega Man games usually are. It opens up more opportunities for the story to take a more mature approach, all while throwing in that shonen anime flair and maintaining the essence of Mega Man without having to cling very closely to it. This is why I became heavily invested into the lore over the years, much like how I have with the Blue Bomber himself. But now let's get into that gameplay. Gunvolt is a fast-paced action platformer with a lot of running and gunning involved, grabbing its playstyle straight out of the Mega Man Zero series. As far as controls go, the player is able to dash, shoot, jump, and wall kick, but he cannot cling to walls whatsoever. The player is also able to activate Gunvolt's flash field, his main go-to for offense, defense, and in some cases use to traverse around certain hazards, since it does slow his descent anytime he's in the air. Your method of attacking is a combination of your tags, which is fired from your gun, and the flash field I brought up earlier. When you shoot enemies with your gun, you'll deal a very small amount of damage while tagging enemies with these metal darts. Your main source of damage is going to come from your flash field, which will shoot out electricity as long as your tags are still active, since they will fall off after a short period. You can also deal additional damage if you happen to tag them multiple times, which can be stacked up to 3 total, or you can spread your damage apart by tagging multiple foes and taking them out at the same time. While you could damage enemies within your flash field, it wouldn't be nearly as effective as tagging them beforehand. Your flash field can also act as a shield against certain projectiles like missiles, but it will do nothing for you against energy-based ones like beams, so keep that in mind. Each time Gunvolt uses his flash field, he will also consume electric power, which is displayed by the blue gauge anytime it's in use. When he's not using electricity, it will refill on its own, or the player can instantly recharge it by pressing the down button twice. If you keep using your electricity until it runs out, however, he'll go into an overheated state where his electricity won't be used for a while until the gauge refills on its own, which is much slower than its regular recovery time. Gunvolt also has access to several skills he's able to learn from leveling up, which is accomplished by killing enemies and bosses alike. It's worth noting that leveling up will increase his health points, so you'll start with having a small amount of health that will gradually grow over time. But let's get back to his skills. The player can equip up to 4 at a time, but only if you are in the stage select screen, and anytime he uses these skills, it will go on a cooldown period while also consuming your skill points. You only have 3 of these suckers to use the entire game, and they will recharge on their own at a much slower rate compared to anything else. But as long as you're attacking enemies, you'll get your skill points back eventually. These skills can range from supportive abilities like healing or speeding up your recharge timer to offensive ones like the Astrosphere or the Lux Caliber. By the way, don't be like this idiot and use the second split skill if you happen to get caught by Osmov or Copen's Greed Snatcher bullets. Trust me, it will save your life. Now this next mechanic is very interesting due to the fact that something like this has never existed in an action platformer up till now, and that is the Pervasion system. Pervasion happens when Gunvolt is hit or touched by anything that would have caused damage, but instead of getting hurt, he ends up taking no damage at all. This pretty much allows him to phase right through attacks that would have been pretty difficult to avoid, and it gives a player plenty of room for error when they're going through these stages, navigating hazards, and fighting enemies and bosses alike. However, it does come with a few conditions when you're making use of this new mechanic. For starters, Pervasion cannot save you if you're in the middle of attacking. There are certain attacks and hazards that can phase right through your flash field, so if you happen to be using that when these make contact, you'll end up taking damage instead, creating a situation where you either want to remain on the offensive or play defensively by not attacking at all and waiting for your attacks to phase through before you continue your onslaught. That type of scenario is more prone prone to bosses since they do have a mixture of attacks that can be nullified by your flash field and some that will pass right through it with no problem. Second, there are some attacks and hazards that will outright ignore your Pervasion completely regardless of what you do. Most of these attacks are exclusive to the bosses you'll fight against, and at that point you're better off relying on your ability to dodge. Finally, there's the fact that you need electric power in order to phase through attacks in the first place. If you happen to phase through too many attacks without paying attention to how much electric power you have, you'll end up overheating, and when that happens, not only you won't be able to use your flash field, but you'll also be subjected to taking damage from anything. This is why it's always a good idea to recharge your electric power after you phase through a considerable amount of hits or after using your electricity for a lengthy period. Now I'm gonna keep it real with you, I thought the Pervasion system at first was kind of busted, because if you know exactly when and where to abuse this, you can cheese your way through a decent portion of the game without needing to worry about taking any damage. You could spend the entire time running through the stage, not caring about any of the hazards at all, and play the game like it's Sonic the Hedgehog while occasionally recharging yourself. But if you play the game the way it was meant to be designed while keeping another mechanic in mind, you'll see that it's not exactly as busted as it appears to be. Plus, bosses will go out of their way to punish you if you rely on it too much, capitalizing on players who fell into that false sense of security. There are two more things I need to mention when it comes to that Pervasion system. It can only be used when this Pervasion chain is equipped. That is because for story related reasons, Gunvolt can't outright activate it on his own yet, and he needs this little trinket to make it easier for him. This is why the rematch for Nova, when you're going for the good ending, well, I say that in air quotes considering what happens, is actually far difficult to pull off because you need to wear the necklace Jewel made for you, and that necklace doesn't come with a Pervasion ability at all. Plus, anytime Pervasion is activated, you'll see a projection of Gunvolt recoiling to make it appear like he's actually taking damage, when in reality, it was just an after image. Again, I really love the attention to detail the devs put into this game. Now, about that other mechanic I was alluding to, this is the time where I need to talk about the kudos system. Anytime you're doing certain actions that are considered to be cool, like taking down multiple enemies while airborne or destroying bosses with EX skills, you'll start to rack up points for your kudos score. Why should you care about that, you ask? Well, for one, anytime you get up to 1,000 points or more, Lumen will begin to sing one of her anthems for you. It doesn't really come with any additional bonuses, it's just literally there to be a hype factor for how well you're playing the game. The songs she does sing, however, are very upbeat, and it fits well with the fast-paced gameplay Gunvolt provides. The other reason why you want to shoot for a high kudos score is so you can earn a higher rank. Anytime you run through a checkpoint, use an EX skill, or finish a stage, you'll be cashing your kudos points in. The more points you cash in, the higher your rank is going to be. And higher ranks will yield more synthesis materials, which you'll be using to craft more gear at the shop. So if you want more material, you're going to want to maintain that higher kudos score as much as you possibly can. On the 3DS version of the game, getting hit will cause your kudos score to drop to 0. But once this game started getting ported to other systems, they included a kudos option that players can use before starting a stage. Gutless will allow you to keep your score no matter what, but it will accumulate at a much lower rate. Plus, your kudos will always cap at 1200. Caution will allow you to gather your points faster, but you'll lose them if you happen to get hit 3 times. Then there's Fearless, which pretty much reverts the kudos system right back to its original setting, where you will lose all your points if you're hit even once. But the trade-off is that you're now able to acquire them much faster. I really like this addition because it allows players both casual and hardcore to be able to enjoy the anthem songs without having to grow increasingly frustrated due to the fact that they were hit by a stray bullet, which happened to me quite often back when I played this on the 3DS. Now, since I brought this up, it's time we talk about that synthesis. Gunvolt can equip gear which can have a passive effect like increasing the damage output of his lightning at the cost of draining his electricity faster, or active ones like being able to double jump and air dash at the expense of his electric power. At the start, these options you have are pretty bare bones, but as you continue to craft more items, more improved versions will become available for you, letting you fully customize Gunvolt to fit your playstyle. So far, I've only mentioned one method of gaining synthesis materials, which is to complete stages at a high enough rank. The other methods involve fighting these gold medals, which can give you more chances to unlock synthesis items or complete the optional challenges. These challenges basically have you complete these stages under certain conditions, and doing so is going to reward you with more items. So if you ever find yourself short on something, checking these out and trying to complete them is a very good idea. Just be aware that they are called challenges for a reason, and if you find one of them to be a bit too daunting to complete, you can always cancel the mission and try again later. Another thing you're able to do is change the tags Gunvolt is able to equip, but these are earned after you've defeated a certain number of bosses. These tags can do a variety of things, such as affecting their trajectory, changing its rate of fire, or even giving you a unique ability like charging them up or firing a tag from a remote location without being noticed. While this is cool and all, I honestly didn't find myself switching my tags all that often, as your default tag is capable of getting the job done most of the time. The only other tags I really used was the Naga for its piercing effect, which is really helpful when fighting Kopin, and the Orochi for its widespread coverage, making it easier to hit multiple enemies, and as I mentioned earlier, it helps immensely against Nova's second form. Still, it is fun to go back and try to experiment with these tags to see what else you can do with them, since I imagine they all have their uses somewhere. There is another mechanic I had not mentioned up to this point, and that is what happens when you kick the bucket, because depending on certain conditions, you may be able to get a little more than seeing Gunvolt's body being vaporized on the spot. You see, if you were to talk to Jewel every now and then, you'll get bits of dialogue that fleshes out both of the characters. But what you're also doing is increasing the chances of an anthem to happen. Anytime Gunvolt dies, there's a chance that the anthem will activate, and when that happens, Lumen will sing her heart out and revive Gunvolt to full health. He will also gain infinite jumps and air dashes, plus an infinite use of his electric power, just like what happens in the final moments of the game, meaning he can use his flash field and pervasion ability indefinitely. It's pretty much a get out of jail free card if luck happens to be on your side, as this does not happen all the time. But as cool as all of this really is, I low-key find it just a bit unnecessary. With your ability to heal and phase through certain attacks, getting this anthem power up upon dying not only feels like you cheated death, but it also feels like the game has taken absolute pity on you and decided to give you a freebie. The good old, hey, you tried your best, now let me carry you. For me personally, winning with this power up feels like I've gotten a trophy for just participating in, not really earning the victory. Granted, you get this same power-up when you're fighting against Osmov, but they designed that battle with this mechanic in mind. So despite you getting an incredible power boost, Osmov is still very capable of putting your face into the dirt. Against anybody else, however, the game just becomes a cakewalk. Honestly, if all it did was revive me at full health and that's all it did, I would have been okay with that. But hey, at least it's tied to an RNG factor and not dying after a number of times. As for the levels themselves, each stage, in good old Mega Man fashion, will contain hazards and gimmicks that will match the current Sumeragi agent you'll be fighting against once you get to the end. For example, Sierra is an agent who uses magic powers, so his stage will have gimmicks involving using magnetism. Zonda uses illusions, so that stage is prone to having gimmicks designed to throw you off with its visuals. Stratos uses man-eating flies, so every now and then, you'll need to protect yourself from the man-eating flies that will swarm the entire area. I'm pretty sure you get it by now. Each of these stages does a wonderful job with presenting you with an easier version of these hazards beforehand, letting you get the hang of how to maneuver around them before throwing more of them at you. I can't really say that I've played a stage that I didn't found all that enjoyable. Even Elise's obligatory darkness stage isn't all that bad once you get the hang of how it works. Then we have the boss fights themselves. These fights will often keep you on your toes as they will spend a majority of the time throwing various attacks at you that can either be shielded against with your flash field or you absolutely need to dodge, otherwise you're going to get hit. Well, unless you have enough electric power to use your pervasion if it is applicable. Each boss has 3 phases which will change once you've drained a section of their health bar. The first phase is usually the easiest as they won't outright blitz you with too many attacks, and generally the bosses are going to stick with 1 or 2 moves at most. Phase 2 is like phase 1, except now they'll change up their entire attack pattern by throwing 1 or 2 new moves that they weren't using before. Finally, we hit the third phase, and this is when they'll start to use their desperation move. These are generally hard-hitting attacks that can take a majority of the screen, and some of these can bypass your pervasion too. One other thing to note is that the boss is capable of activating these moves as many times as they want, so don't think that these will be a once and done kind of deal. Overall, these fights are pretty fun and well balanced, and they do scale properly with difficulty, even though the last fights in the game do hit a very heavy difficulty spike once you get there. Now, if you're playing on any other platform that's not a 3DS, which chances are that is likely what's going to happen, they did added additional features that originally wasn't in the 3DS version before. However, this was patched into the 3DS version once those other ports of the game came out. And this is Story Mode Plus, a mode where the characters will occasionally talk with each other while you are playing through these stages. What I really like about Story Mode Plus is that it further fleshes out the characters, letting you get to know them a little better just by reading their dialogue exchanges. Running with Story Mode Plus can also lead to some pretty hokey dialogue exchanges between Gunvolt and the bosses you fight against that'll definitely make it feel like you're watching a cheesy shonen anime. Shoot, it was through this mode that I learned that Gunvolt and Osmoth went through the same experimentation that Sumeragi put them under in an attempt to create the strongest Septima user known as the Azure Striker. This is exactly why the two of them have the same powers. This is also where Gunvolt got his code name, meaning he's been using this alias forever. It is stated that Gunvolt does have a regular name, however it was never revealed and Gunvolt himself had long forgotten it. Imagine going through your whole life using your gamer tag instead of your actual name to the point where you literally forgot what your real name is. As much as I love the Story Mode Plus feature, it does come with its drawbacks. For one, if you want to get the most out of Story Mode Plus, there are a few moments where you need to slow the pacing of the game down in order to read the full dialogue exchange between the characters. This is because if you progress a little too far, it's gonna cut off before it finishes. But the biggest issue with this mode, which I'm 100% sure you figured it out by now, that it will obscure roughly about 25% of what you're playing on screen, making it a little difficult to react to certain things even if you're playing things at a slower pace. This is especially painful when you're fighting against the bosses, since you won't be able to see certain attacks coming and you'll have to rely on audio cues along with animations in order to react accordingly, all while actively reading the dialogue at the same time. It is the main reason why I will just dance around the boss and not enter its second phase until the dialogue exchange ends. Still, despite these issues, I still say that everyone should run through the game with Story Mode Plus at least once. That is, if you care at all about the game's characters and want to see them interact more. Otherwise, you can just turn it off in the settings menu and keep your screen cluttered free. Hold up. Did he just say bae? He did. Alright, I don't really mean to sound very nitpicky about this, and I promise I'm going to get straight to the point. I honestly can't stand it when games find it necessary to weasel in trendy lingo or memes due to the fact that it causes the game to age poorly when said lingo or memes fizzle out, and it also has the potential to ruin the immersion. Yeah, go on and call me a stick in the mud, but I honestly don't find either of this funny or cute. It just feels very out of place and again, takes me out of the immersion whenever I see it. Anyway, let's continue. Now, at any time you feel like Gunvolt is a bit too easy, even with the final moments of the game not pulling any more punches, you do have access to a hard mode where the game will outright take the kid gloves off. While your flash field attacks will deal more damage than before and your kudos points will accumulate much faster, you no longer have access to crafting, your SP skills are locked out, spikes will now instantly kill you, Gunvolt's health is drastically reduced to the point where at most he'll only able to take about maybe 2 hits before dying, and if his pervasion takes a hit for him, Gunvolt will instantly enter an overheated status and will take 10 years for him to recover. This means if you want to succeed in beating hard mode, you're gonna need to play this game to perfection, otherwise be prepared to see yourself dying over and over and over again. The best way to describe the Gunvolt games, in all honesty, is what happens when you take the Mega Man franchise, build the game in a style that speedrunners would absolutely love, then you top it all off with that shonen anime energy, complete with the chance of having some plot armor saving you at the very last second when things get way too dicey. While it does borrow a lot of elements from the Mega Man games, it still plays differently enough for it to stand out on its own. Even after playing its sequels and the spin-off titles, the first Gunvolt is still an overall fun game, and I would definitely recommend everybody to give it a try. On that note, if you've made it all the way to the end of the video, I want to thank all of y'all for watching, as I've had a lot of fun putting this together. Additionally, I want to thank each and every one of you who helped get this channel past 500 subs. Both those who have been here since the beginning and the recent subscribers are all magnificent gems in my book, and I'm going to keep pumping out that good juicy content for you all to enjoy. In the meantime, plenty of thumbs fall off, stay in good health, and I hope to see y'all in the next one. Peace out, everybody.